So we are on chapter 15 and we're on section 5 and we're going over the biomes that are on Earth. And we went through the terrestrial biomes, those land biomes and those climates from the tundra all the way to the desert and rainforests. And now we're going to talk about the water areas or the aquatic biomes. Those biomes can either be saltwater or freshwater. So 2/3 of the Earth's surface is water. And aquatic biomes are larger than terrestrial biomes because of the amount of space that they take up. They show great variations in temperature, dissolved nutrients, gases, and sunlight penetration. Marine ecosystems and freshwater ecosystems are the two major divisions. So remember that there's marine, that means saltwater, and then freshwater. And those are the two divisions of aquatic biomes. High salinity, salinity means salt, distinguishes the marine ecosystem from the freshwater. So, of course, the marine means they have a lot of salt water, right? And the freshwater has limited. The water in the marine has a salt content of about 3.5% salt. And the freshwater has no salt or very low levels of salt. So that salt affects the ocean and what kind of plants and animals, including the kinds of fish that can be in the salt water. Isn't it amazing that God made some fish for salt water and God made fish for freshwater? So let's talk about freshwater ecosystems. So freshwater, we look here, here's the 3 different types. Freshwater is classified to whether the water is flowing or standing still. Rivers, streams, and brooks have water in motion, like this, the water in motion. Because the waters are flowing, they contain high levels of oxygen, which are beneficial for freshwater fish, like carp and trout. They live in those fresh waters. So we know those streams around where you live, or you go to the Yuba or to the Bear River and you see them running and they have lots of oxygen, the oxygenation of the running water, the rushing water. So ecosystems with standing water include ponds and lakes. So here we have ponds. Ponds, this is more of a pond here, ponds and lakes. And so aquatic plants and animals usually are found in the upper layers of the pond where the dissolved oxygen is abundant. On the lower areas, there's not so much oxygen. So you'll find those fish and stuff towards the top of the ponds and lakes. Also, we have wetlands. So what are wetlands? Wetlands are areas like marshes and swamps. And these marshes and swamps are typical of where there's underground water. The table is underground near the ground surface and it's coming up and making these wetlands. Wetlands are important places as hatcheries for fish and rearing grounds for all kinds of animals. So this, I think, appears more of a wet land. So just think of wetland, just think of them as marshes. And these are the different kinds of fresh water. If I can get this, there we go. So marine means salt, marine means ocean. Ocean ecosystems, marine ecosystems. They're associated with the ocean starting from the shore. So usually that you're going to see different ecosystems, different kinds of plants and animals living closer to the shore as they do in the deep sea, right? So let's start with the estuary. An estuary occurs where the nutrient-rich fresh water comes from the rivers and streams and mixes with salt water, like this. So you have the river coming in here, and it's going to mix here. But the areas of mixing here are going to be part salt and part freshwater. So they're going to have a lower salinity just because of the river. They are very productive ecosystems because the salinity is lower. So you get a lot of different kinds of animals and fish and such that can live there in the area that's a mixture. Phytoplankton, grasses, crabs, fish, and many migratory birds thrive in these estuaries. Examples of estuaries, and I wrote some of these, the Hudson River, down to the Chesapeake Bay, the Mobile River. If you in New England, you can see a lot of areas where whenever a river dumps into the ocean, you're going to have an estuary. Coral reefs are very beautiful. Here's a great picture of the great coral reef there. Coral reefs are formed from the remains of stony corals and coralline algae. So you see these corals well, some of them are very stony and some of them are alive. And they can be found near volcanic islands and in warm, clear, shallow water parallel to the shore. So usually wherever you have volcanoes, whether it be towards Hawaii or Australia, or you'll have these coral reefs with a beautiful, beautiful variety of fish. These ecosystems provide a variety of habitats for plant and animal life because they are resistant to waves and rich in nutrients. So because of the coral reefs, there's a lot of nutrients there for the fish to eat. And then of course, it calms down the waves from coming through and splashing through. So it's a place where the fish can rest. The Great Barrier Reef extends over 1,400 miles along the coast of Australia. Been there. It's a beautiful Great Barrier Reef, a beautiful place to go scuba diving and snorkeling. Intertidal zones, or littoral zones. So what are these? These are the areas located between the highest and lowest tides. So as the tide goes out, you have some land, and the tide comes in and covers up the land. So that's that area, intertidal. That means that sometimes you can see land and sometimes they'll be filled with water, depending on the tides. The waves and the alteration of tides create a variety of habitats for plants and animals. Algae, marine worms, small fish, variety of crabs, sea stars, and sea cucumbers live there. So there's a lot of small things that live, and you can see that pictures of it. Here's an area of an intertidal zone, and some of this would be later on covered up by seawater. These are the best studied areas because they're easy for us to access, right? But you always have to be careful, especially if you're going down in a cave area and the tide comes in, because basically you can get caught in the midst of the tide coming in at a certain time of day. Neretic zones or coastal zones. So here we have the deep ocean and we have the continental shelf. See where this goes up to the beach. This is where the intertidal's coming in. Here's the land, here's the beach, and you'll see the tide comes in and out here. And then this area here is called the continental shelf. So it's pretty shallow, and then to the deeper ocean. Those are the three areas you need to really look at. So regions that extend past the intertidal zone to the edge of the continental shelf. So here it is. This is the Neretic zone. And it's home to coral reefs. A lot of coral reefs are there. And most of the world's commercial fishing industry is in this area. As the fish come, is usually you can go out just a little bit ways and in the midst of the ocean and find that continental shelf and go fishing and catch a lot of fish. The shallow waters allow for the harvest of many bottom-dwelling creatures like crabs and lobsters too. So you can get within this a lot of crabs and lobsters. You have those lobster cages or crab cages they use in the Neretic zone. So here's some more, you can just look at this picture, intertidal zone organisms. You can see where you'll see all these different animals. You'll see usually the drier zones to the high tide, the middle tide to the low tide. This is when the tide comes in, and then you'll find all these things, mussels and sea stars and barnacles, limpets, periwinkle snails, hermit crabs, mussels. You see over here in this area, you'll see more of the sea stars, sea anemones, and all of these things here. So there's a lot of different, in the intertidal zone, there's a lot of organisms to look at. A lot of little animal type things. And plants. Ocean zones are the open ocean. the deeper oceans. And they're from the continental shelves to the open ocean. And you'll see whales and squid and octopus, sharks, and large sea creatures, including migratory tuna. You go out there, tuna, there's a lot of people that want to fish tuna because tuna is a big deal for the diets of people. Everybody loves to have some tuna fish, huh? So, but these you'll see, and there's the sunlight zone is the top zone, the twilight zone, and the really deep zone, the deep fish. You can see what the types of fish there. I'm not going to go over all those names, which I don't know a lot of the names there, but you can see there's a lot of deep sea creatures. Even down in the deepest of sea, we have these strange looking creatures. The sharks go down there too, so you see. So, a lot of ocean creatures. We'll go over this when we study the fish later on. Okay, that's it.